Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Coach Parker with CoachParker.org. How you guys doing today? Hey, sorry I've taken probably about a month off and been busy with the holidays and getting back into everything, and been actually working on a spread book and doing a lot of research on that and trying to get that done for April-May time frame. Sorry it's been so long. And I've been thinking about this video for several months now on attacking youth football defenses, especially since I've been doing a lot of research on the spread, and it's a running spread and how to attack a certain defense and so forth. So I think it's time I can put a video together and we can go over how to attack common youth football defenses. So let's get started. So mostly youth, at least in my area, and I'm in North Texas, Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we play for a highly competitive rec league. It's not select, but we get a lot of select players and coaches, and usually 2 or 3 of the teams in each of the age divisions could be a competitive select team outside of select. So many of the select organizations around DFW actually recruit our players. So we've got some highly skilled players in our area. But most of the defenses that we're seeing between the 5 and 12-year-old in our age groups here in North Texas, Dallas-Fort Worth area, they're mostly basic run defenses. They'll have some packages for some passing, but that's like 11, 12-year-olds, maybe 10. But mostly you're seeing these basic type run defenses, nothing too crazy. And usually they're 5, 6, 7, 8 man fronts. So just depending on the flavor of the day. And a lot of times those 5, 6, 7, 8 man fronts come into 9 to 11 in the box because a lot of guys are running the football a lot, and or they're just young and having to run the football because they don't have a passing quarterback. So that's kind of what we're seeing here. The other thing I just want to talk about youth coaches that we've seen is youth coaches defensively, at least what we see here, don't really adjust very well. There's little or no scouting prior to the game, and really there's little or no adjustments during the game. So how to attack them is kind of interesting. If you're scouting them and they're not doing, if they're not doing it in one game, it's probably gonna give you the same thing in the next. And if you're killing it in a hole in your game that you're playing them, they're probably not going to adjust. So there's no reason really to go away from that. So that's kind of what we found. We have run a 5-hole play like 10 times in a row for a touchdown, and just were shocked that they didn't adjust to that or blitz that hole. But there's some things there. There's some common personnel weaknesses which you can attack, and we'll go over that here in a minute. There's also a lot of select leagues now are putting, along with rec leagues, are putting MPP requirements, or maybe the team organization itself in select, because they're getting a lot of parent complaints. We know one of here in town that got a lot of complaints. They were charging extremely high rates and not playing some of the players, and I think that caused a little rift. So you're seeing MPP requirements, so you can take advantage of those when those players sub in. And then the 4 common defenses that we see is a 6'2" wide tackle, maybe a 6'3", kind of hybridization of that because we're not really passing that much. 5'3" defense is always popular. 70 eagle, diamond, we're seeing those. And then, of course, the gap 8 or gam, those kind of come in at the younger ages. So that's what we're kind of seeing and what's common in these defenses. So let's jump right in. I personally run a 6'2" multi-defense, and so we'll start out with the 6'2" wide tackle. And just really wanted to talk about some interesting things that, I don't know, I had a brain fart the other day and kind of an epiphany, and decided to take a look at kind of where common weaknesses, personnel weaknesses, that youth football defenses normally have. And so what I've asked a few coaches to do was circle where the weakest players would usually be on the field on defense. And so it was very interesting, and this is what's come up. We did all agree that this side of the defense is usually weaker. So if you're running 5 holes, odd number holes, that's usually a weaker side and probably a good thing to do. Some defenses may adjust to you because they know you're doing it, but most of the time, 80% of the time, I like to run to that side, and usually defensive teams will be weaker to that side overall. So that's good to know. As far as general personnel, especially on the 6-2 defense, usually what happens are 1 or 2 of the guards for many parts of the game will be MPP players here, and they'll be very weak players. And this is one of the reasons why our wedge plays work out really well, especially if you have some big meat to put in. We usually switch our tackles and guards and have a big center, and so we just go right up the middle there with that. And so we find that those 2 guys on defenses, most of the game, are going to be weak. Now, sometimes they'll put a stud in there to throw it off, and you can adjust to that because then it weakens up somewhere else. But usually those 2 guys, and especially in a rec league, are going to be the weakest players on the defense because those are good bear crawl. They can have them bear crawl submarine there, and that works out pretty good. The next 2 weakest places are usually here. Now, one of those, this player may be stronger, but usually this guy's weaker, and so that's good there. So you know that your corners are going to be weak. Maybe the right side corner on offense will be stronger. So the 8-hole sweep might be tough, but we found that the 7 and 9-hole sweep there is usually pretty good. So the other weak player that we found on defenses is this free safety. Now, a lot of teams will play a MPP player there, or they'll play a stud. So it's interesting to find out, but a lot of times that'll be a mediocre to a weaker player along with the 2 corners and the 2 guards there. So usually the strong players are this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. Those 4 players are usually very strong. And I know from my defenses, those players are stout. So I know a lot of other defensive coaches do that. So you really have to block those 4 guys personnel-wise. The other players that, besides those 4 that you've got your 2 tackles. And usually this right side tackle is pretty strong, and this guy is a little bit weaker. Just a tad. But this guy will usually be strong. So you got kind of a dotty, weak player here possibly on this side. So if you notice what happens here, if you take a look, what could happen on a lot of teams, which is what we were just saying, is this left side of the ball is going to be pretty stout. And the same thing with the linebacker, the Sam over here, although I've got the Sam switch, and it really depends if they flip them. I do. But if Will was over here, he would be the weaker of the linebackers, and so you get the Will linebacker over here. And you can play with that with your backfield to make that weaker linebacker move over. So really what you're looking at is you got to beat this guy here. And so that's kind of what I've figured out when I've been looking at this spread book, is I've got to beat this backside D end pretty much on any, this is for just about any defense. I'm looking at the 6-2 here. But really, on any defense in youth football, the 2 D ends are usually massive and the best players on the team. So you really, in one of the linebackers, so you really got to beat one of the 2 D ends, which is half the field, and then you got to put a head or 2 on that other linebacker, and then you're pretty much gone. So that's what we've got going on there. So personnel-wise, again, what you've got here, you've probably got your 2 weak guards, defensive guards in the middle, 2 weak corners, and possibly a weak safety, or at least a weak safety, a weak corner, and a strong corner. But if you look at it, one side of the ball probably is going to be weak. So that's general. Now, if I'm going to attack the defense, and we'll do in this blue now, for the 6-2 defense, especially the wide tackle, it's really hard to sweep on a 6-2 defense because you have these two guys sitting here, and they're usually doing pretty good to contain, and this corner's kind of containing. So what I like to do with any 60 defense is I'm looking for this free gap here. You see that free gap? And the free gap, as I call, is the gap where there's no lineman in the gap. There's a linebacker there. And so I want to attack, usually with power leads or leads, those gaps. And if they go in a 6-2 tight, the gap goes from B to C. If they go into like a 60 split defense, the gap goes to A. But I want to hit wherever I find that. And really, that's a good general rule, is I want to attack any defense where there's the linebacker. Because I'll split this with a split block and shoot a power lead or a lead up there on the linebacker and then cut off that. So the 62 defenses, or the 60 defenses, are really good to find those free gaps and to attack with a power lead or a lead. The other thing with the 60 defense is the backside flat right here. Quick pass. That's pretty much killer right there. And then especially the long passes in here. You got a flat. This guy goes out like that. Maybe this guy swings. So you've got kind of this area right here for passes. Now, passes is a little bit difficult, but that's where you can attack the 6-2 defense. The way that I like to attack the 6-2 defense is I'll take another blocker here with this guy, and we'll try to double team this end and then run a power sweep out there off of that. And that's how to attack. And I usually attack the left side, the weak side, and go for it there. And then I try to attack these open free gaps. And then if I know that they've got little MPP players in here, we'll definitely run our beast wedges here and go for it there. So, or any type of wedge right up the middle works really well when they've got 2 MPP players here. So that's how to attack the 6-2 defense. It is kind of tough to sweep on a 6-2, but you can definitely hit these B, C gaps depending on which one's open with power leads. The quick flat, a little bit longer passes to the outs are good. A little swing pass after you clear a zone works out good because they're usually in man coverage there. So that's really how to attack a 6-2 defense. And you just got to be patient with it and really gut it up in the middle. A lot of coaches don't like to run these 3- and 4-yard plays, but they work out really good for us. So let's move on to the 5-3. 5-3, I love when a defense runs a 5-3 in youth football. The 5-3 is my starting pass defense because you've got linebackers backed up. And what I just said about free is kind of what you've got, the free gap. You've got a lot more free gaps here because youth football linebackers really don't read the ball or backs very well and flow. Only a few teams have done that on me, so you've got 3 yards almost every play if you're doing a good thing. The same thing happens with personnel on this. You've got usually the guard down there is maybe weak or a tackle. The linebackers usually in the 5-3 are really pretty good. One of them might be bad. 2 corners are usually weak, and the free safety is usually weak. And this 5-3 could turn into a 5-4, kind of like the 6-2 turns into 6-3 by dropping that free safety down. But you're really not going to see anything too great with this. It's still going to be left side is usually the weaker side there. And so how I like to attack the 5-3 defense past those personnel issues is I really love to attack the C gaps. I love the C gap play to the 5 and the 6 hole. That is bread and butter. When a team comes out in the 5-3 to us, we pretty much will line up in an I or a power I or an offset I and just pound the ball in those gaps until they fill those. And the other thing, the wedge works out good because you've got this big open gap here. So wedge is always good on that. Passing the flats, that's a little bit more tricky now because you've got all those linebackers out there. So I don't like running little flat patterns or anything out there with that. You can definitely clear and run a swing pass here to this side if you wanted to, but I really prefer to pound the ball on a 5-3. If a youth team, now this is youth team, not so much high school, and that's because in youth, what's happening in youth is, these linebackers here are not high school linebackers, and very seldom do youth linebackers flow to the ball really well. So they've backed off these linebackers that don't know how to read a key, that don't know how to read ball direction, probably can get screwed up on misdirection plays. But definitely, if they get a power lead running right at them, they're not stepping up to the lead blocker. So you get 3 or 4 yards every time. And you know what? I love 3 or 4 yard plays, especially if you've got a smart team that isn't getting a lot of penalties. You can get 4 plays, three plays, 4 yards each. That's a first down moving down the field. Just don't get your penalties, and you can rank up touchdowns all day and use the clock where their offense is never on the team. So a 5-3 defense, I personally will just pound the 5 and 6 hole. A couple of misdirection plays every now and then to, you can do this this little wing reverse here. Works out really well once you're pounding them in the 5 hole several times, hit that wing reverse. So that works out really good there. So that's how I really attack the 5-3 in youth football there. And once again, the left side usually is weaker. So, like I said, I've run a 5-hole play like 10 times in a row in the Super Bowl and killed it. So the 70 defense becomes a little bit harder, but because they've usually got weaker players, and this is probably 7, 8, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, maybe you'll get this at a 9-year-old, 10-year-old team. Maybe sometimes. And usually if you get that group at an older team playing it, you can make sure that these 4 guys are probably your best players and these 2 ends. And they're definitely going to be probably weak in the middle here, and maybe this guy's good. So really on a 70 defense, what I like to try to do is I'm going to try to get to the outside here. Everybody's kind of piled into the middle. I'm going to try to sweep on this 70 defense. And then if I find an MPP player in one of these holes, we're just going to go pound it. And if they have mistakenly set up these 3, which is amazing to me, if they have mistakenly set up these 3 guys as weak players, you can wedge all day. And the same thing goes if you know the beast play. If they've set up these 2 players, you can beast tank all day. So you just got to find that. But really, I like to, on a 70 defense, I've got so many people stacked up in the middle. Sometimes these guys are a little inside. I'm going to try to sweep on those guys. And of course, you can set up a spread and some with your tight ends and kind of spread these cornerbacks out, and then you've definitely got this angle here if you can get ahead on that D end if he's that great. So on a 70 defense, because they've got more people in the middle, I'm going to try to get to the outside, and then if I find some MPP players in the middle there, I'm going to take advantage of all that. And of course, if one of these free safeties, which they shouldn't be, but if they are, you can send your right here to the middle with one of your guys and just pop that over the middle. So that's kind of the 70. I run a 70 a lot at a young age because it's hard to run against. You have to basically run sweeps. So if you're not a sweep team, a 70 defense might be tough unless you can find one of those weaknesses in the middle. The 80 defense or gap 8 or GAM or whatever, this is a tough little defense, And it's kind of like the 70 defense. You've got to find a weakness within the defensive line if you're going to run up here in the middle and use, like I said earlier, you know, the weaker side of the line is going to be usually this way. So try to pound it in here if you can. If they've given you this, go right up the middle. But once again, kind of like the 70, because everybody's compacted, try to run, let me get the blue pen here. Try to run sweeps, if you can, to get outside. Of course, you've got these little flats, maybe a little swing, kind of like that, and make this guy really have to work. We got nailed in a Super Bowl where they swept out on a sweep option pass and drug this backside tight end over. This is like a 11-year-old team, 10-year-old team, and hit that for a touchdown. And that was difficult because the Fred played a dive here, and he came over with this backside, and he was sweeping wide and hit this. I think they actually pitched it to this back, so a sweep option pass play. So the 80 defense is really set up for short to attack it with short passes, sweeps, and if you can find an MPP player there in the middle, really take advantage of that. So that's some common things that I do to kind of attack those defenses. But here's a list here. Just go through this real quick because the video's gotten kind of long. Is you really want to attack that free gap where there's no defensive lineman down in that gap. And I said no linebacker here, but you want a linebacker there, even a linebacker that's not in that gap. But you don't want a D lineman that's sitting there. So this is actually the D line. You don't want a D line in that gap. When I find that free gap, I like to try to go to a sloppy or a sloppy between the tackle and guard, or a nasty between the tackle and the split end, and widen that out to make that hole a little bit bigger. And that way we just butt-to-butt split that block there, and then we power lead through, and that way it's an easier hole and it's longer for the defender to get to that gap. And a lot of times when we do make those splits, those sloppy and nasty splits, the defenders just move out willy-nilly and don't even think about it. So that's a good way to do that. We moved our tight end one time out about 5 or 6 yards, and the D tackle kept going head up on him, which puts the D end out. We ran down their throats in the 5 and 6 hole doing that. The other thing is to use, I like to use power leads with 2 or 3 running backs blocking. I love that. Just set up a wildcat and run power leads at a weak lineman, or do like 3 guys on the D end who's really good and just run right at it. Because usually they'll set up a really good D end, some weaker players around him. So just attack that D end and run at him, cut off of the block there, and then the guys that are around, usually that really good person are weaker, and your really good back can beat those. So that's how to do that. I personally love to overload the offensive line. There's so many coaches, youth coaches on defense, that will not adjust to that. So use that to your advantage, and or flip your line from strong to weak. A lot of guys won't even see that, or just do that every now and then when you want to get a big play, and that'll confuse some guy too. But don't be afraid to go to a strong side line, overloaded line, or every now and then do a strong tackle. Move your power tackle over and switch your weak tackle, and you'll be amazed at what happens there. We also, on wedges, will move our big tackles to guards. The guards will move to tackles, and I usually have move in a bigger center. And it's amazing how many times people won't see that. We had a problem with one team a couple of years ago where they had this one really good linebacker, and basically we double-teamed him, triple-teamed him every play. We just didn't even block the other people. The tackles and the guards went right after him. He got so frustrated, got a couple of penalties, and it really worked out for us. We just knew we had to get out of the backfield quick when we were doing that. We were in a deeper shotgun, and so the lineman couldn't get us, and we got to the outside. The other thing, use misdirection to attack a lot, especially with the younger age groups. Wing back counters and reverses work really good, especially because younger guys, they'll just go after the ball. And any over pursuing defense, definitely use misdirection. I personally love quick passes to the flats, especially because these youth defenses are so compact. When you get 10 in the box, you really need to throw a quick pop pass to back those guys up. I know it's hard to do sometimes. You don't want to pass, but just tell yourself, you know you're probably going to waste it down here. Just don't throw the interception. You may not get the pass completed, but at least the defense has to respect that you're going to do something. That kid's going to catch the ball one time, and it's going to be for a big gainer. So use that if you can. Everybody probably knows this, but the fastest team with the fastest player could usually sweep. If the fastest kid on defense and he's playing corner, you probably can't sweep toward him. So just use that to your advantage. Don't sweep toward the fastest kid on their team, because that's probably not going to work. Always try to find the weaker side corner and the weaker side D-end and linebacker and tackle and go for it. I definitely have blocking calls for my offense, for our basic standard defenses, but I may put some calls in specifically for a team to attack maybe a little defense that they do differently. So don't be afraid to do that. Definitely scout the defensive weaknesses. And so well, before the game, I'm going to run over this guy all game. Definitely, about 10 years ago, one of the guys, I saw him doing this on the other side of the field from me, and he was watching my MPPs when we would sub them in or not, and he'd run right at them. So if you've got a spotter that can find their MPPs, find out when they sub in, go for it. Same thing, you see it in the NFL. Cornerback gets injured, they put a new corner in, they throw to the corner. So same thing with injury subs. When that injury happens, and they put a sub in, go right after the sub immediately. So that's some stuff to attack. Basically, I like to find the weakest corner and start picking on him with sweeps and passes. So if you could find one, go for it. And on the cornerbacks, you really have to decide, do you want to split out a corner with your wide receivers and split-ins, or do you want to bring the corner in tight? Because sometimes you put like a lazy corner out, and he doesn't do, you don't get a block on him, and he's just standing there, and you sweep right in, and he didn't even make a move, and he makes a tackle. So a lot of times on those weaker corners, I like to play him tight. He'll move in with my tight end and then sweep out, and he's too slow to get to the sweep, and I don't even have to worry about it out there. So think about that. I know a lot of guys try to run the spread with a wide out corner, but you got that corner sitting out there in youth football. They're not doing half the stuff what you think they should do in high school or college. They'll just wind up sitting there, and so it kind of screws you up. So you have to kind of play with that. And look, the other thing that's very, this happens to me. Look, if what you're doing is working, keep doing it. Don't overthink it. Don't get tricky. I've overthought and tricked myself out of like scoring a ton, making a lot of yardage because I didn't want to keep running the same play over and over, and thought I would pass or run a misdirection play or do something funky, and have almost lost games for that. So, you know what? Get ahead way early and not have to worry about losing a game if you want to do some tricky stuff, but whatever's working, keep doing it. If you are getting 5 or 6 yards of carry out of the 3-hole and it looks ugly, but you're pounding the ball, using the clock, doing what your team is scoring on that play, don't shy away from running that play or every other play. Don't mess it up because you just think the fans want to see something up or your team wants to do something. Your goal is to get it down the field, put it in the end zone, and score. So don't overthink yourself. Don't get too tricky. But that's some of the common things on how I personally attack those defenses and a defense. So if you like the video, please give me a thumbs up over there. If you don't, you can do that too. Please put some comments, and maybe you've got some ways that you like to attack certain defense. Comments helps me quite a bit. If you like these videos and some of the other videos I'm doing, please subscribe to the channel so you get updates when I put a video up there. If you've got some coaches or some players that would like to see the video, please share the video. That really helps too. Please shop my store. I've got the Power Wing Beast Offense book. I've got the 6'2 multi-8 defense book. I'm working on the Wildcat book, which you can get right now pretty cheap because I'm in the process of writing it. So go over to and shop my store and buy my books, or just go over to coachparker.org. There's a bunch of other information over there with drills and articles on coaching youth football, and there's a ton more videos here on the YouTube channel which you can go through, both on my defense, offense, and just there's also a rookie coaching clinic out there that I give to my local league. Hope you like this video. I hope you're having a good day too. This is Coach Parker with coachparker.org. Remember to play for fun, and winning is funner. See you guys next time. Ciao.